They tell you the same lie over and over again. If you want to change the world, you have to rise. You have to lead. You have to win. You have to stand at the front of the line and prove that you deserve to be there. That's the story we were taught. But here's the part no one warns you about. Winning the game is the fastest way to become its prisoner. And there is one archetype that saw this early. Not because they were smarter, not because they were stronger, but because they felt something. The moment the rules were explained, Pisces didn't feel inspired. They felt tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from failure. The kind that comes from seeing the ending before the story even begins. Pisces doesn't want to lead. They want the game itself to stop making sense. And that is why they are resisted. From the outside, leadership looks heroic. From the inside, it looks like maintenance. You don't change the system when you lead it. You preserve it. You enforce its values. You defend its boundaries. You punish those who don't fit. Even rebels who win end up guarding the same gates they once tried to tear down. Pisces sees this pattern everywhere. In corporations, in politics, in families, in social movements. Different faces, same structure. Climb, compete, dominate, repeat. And the higher someone climbs, the more they have to pretend that the ladder is worth it. This is where Pisces quietly steps back. Not because they are afraid of heights, but because they can feel how hollow the top really is. They don't want the corner office if it costs their nervous system. They don't want applause if it comes with emotional numbness. They don't want power if it requires turning off compassion. This isn't idealism. It's perception. Pisces is the final sign of the Zodiac. It carries the residue of every role humanity has played. The fighter who won but lost themselves. The builder who succeeded but felt empty. The ruler who controlled everything except their own inner peace. Pisces remembers all of it. So when society says, be ambitious, Pisces hears, be disconnected. When society says, be strong, Pisces hears, don't feel. And when society says, lead, Pisces hears, keep this system alive at any cost. That's not a role Pisces wants. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. Leadership is still obedience, just at a higher level. You obey growth metrics. You obey market logic. You obey public opinion. You obey the fear of losing status. The leader doesn't escape the system. They become its most visible servant. Pisces doesn't rebel against this loudly. They don't stage dramatic exits. They don't announce revolutions. They simply stop believing that the system defines reality. And belief is everything. The moment belief weakens, rules turn into suggestions. Authority turns into performance. Success turns into a question mark. This is where the tension begins to rise. Because systems can tolerate anger. They can tolerate criticism. They can tolerate opposition. What they cannot tolerate is disengagement. They cannot tolerate someone who doesn't want to win. Because if you don't want to win, they can't control you. This is why Pisces energy feels threatening. Not aggressive, not confrontational. Threatening in a quiet, destabilizing way. They sit in meetings and don't buy into the urgency. They work jobs, but don't attach their identity to the title. They move through society without internalizing its scoreboard. And that makes people uncomfortable because it forces a mirror. It forces others to ask, why am I doing all this? That question alone is enough to collapse a worldview. Here's a moment most people recognize, even if they've never said it out loud. You finally get what you wanted. The promotion, the money, the recognition. And instead of relief, you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel trapped. Because now you can't complain. You won. Pisces feels that emptiness early. Sometimes as teenagers. Sometimes as children. They sense that the promised reward doesn't match the emotional cost. So they hesitate. They drift. They explore sideways. And society punishes them for it. They're called lazy, unfocused, irresponsible. But what's really happening is that Pisces refuses to trade their inner life for external validation. This is the first mini-climax. Because this refusal is not harmless. It destabilizes everything around them. Parents worry. Managers get frustrated. Partners feel insecure. Why won't you just commit? Why won't you push harder? Why won't you want more? Pisces doesn't have a clean answer. They just know that more feels wrong. And that terrifies people who built their entire identity around wanting more. Here's where resistance intensifies. Pisces gets labeled too sensitive, too emotional, too unrealistic. But sensitivity isn't fragility. Sensitivity is information. Pisces feels what others suppress. The burnout beneath productivity. The grief beneath ambition. The loneliness beneath success. They pick up emotional signals. Before they become symptoms. Before breakdowns. Before addictions. Before midlife crises. They sense the fracture early. And instead of numbing themselves, they stay open. That openness hurts. Pisces often carries anxiety. Not because they are weak, but because they are absorbing what the environment refuses to process. They feel collective exhaustion as personal weight. This is why Pisces themes are exploding across culture. Burnout, mental health, emotional authenticity, soft living, choosing meaning over money. These aren't trends. They are symptoms. They are signs that the old system is failing the nervous system. Pisces doesn't start these conversations to be popular. They start them because silence becomes unbearable. And here comes the second mini-climax. Because once people begin to name the pain, they can't unsee it. Once someone hears, "You're not broken for feeling exhausted," they stop blaming themselves. And the moment self-blame dissolves, systems lose leverage. A system survives by convincing individuals that their suffering is personal failure. Pisces exposes the lie. They say, "Maybe it's not you." And suddenly, everything changes. This is why Pisces is dangerous. They don't attack power. They undermine its psychological foundation. They don't say, "Overthrow the leaders." They say, "Why are we letting this define our worth?" That question spreads quietly, through conversations, through art, through music, through stories that feel too real to ignore. Pisces doesn't need followers. They create resonance. And resonance is stronger than authority. Here's the part most people don't expect. Pisces doesn't want to save the world. They don't believe in saviors. Saviors still imply hierarchy. Someone above, someone below. Pisces wants dissolution. They want false structures to fall apart naturally. They want endings. To be honest, this is where the emotional peak deepens. Endings are terrifying because identity is attached to systems, jobs, roles, relationships, beliefs. Letting go feels like death. Pisces understands death differently, not as annihilation, but as transition. They are comfortable in the space where things fall apart before something new forms. That space is messy. There are no instructions, no guarantees, and most people avoid it. They would rather cling to dysfunction than face uncertainty. Pisces walks into uncertainty willingly, not because they are fearless, but because they know that clinging hurts more. This is the third mini-climax, because this is where listeners either leave or lean all the way in. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in the race everyone else is running, if you've ever felt like success demanded pieces of you that you weren't willing to sacrifice, if you've ever felt like slowing down was treated as failure, then this isn't random. You're not defective. You're responding to a system that was never designed to support emotional wholeness. Pisces doesn't offer a blueprint for what comes next. They don't replace one system with another. They clear the ground. They allow collapse without rushing to rebuild. They sit with discomfort until something truer emerges. That patience looks like passivity to people addicted to control. But it's not passivity. It's trust. Trust that life doesn't need to be dominated to continue. Trust that meaning can't be forced. Trust that humanity is more than productivity. This is where the narrative turns quietly radical. Because if Pisces is right, then leadership as we know it is outdated. Then winning is not the goal. Then success measured by dominance is a dead language. Pisces doesn't want to lead you forward. They want to walk beside you. As illusions dissolve, they don't promise clarity. They promise honesty. They don't promise comfort. They promise relief from pretending. And that's why they are often misunderstood. Society celebrates builders, but every era also needs dissolvers. There comes a point where building further only deepens the fracture. Pisces arrives at that point. Not loudly, not heroically, quietly. They come at the end of cycles, when something has run its course, but refuses to admit it. They hold space for the ending, and endings are sacred. They are not failures. They are preparation. So if you've been feeling tired, in a way rest doesn't fix. If you've been questioning goals you were told to want, if you've been sensing that something is fundamentally off, you may not be lost. You may be standing where one era dissolves and another has not yet learned How to begin? Leadership plays inside the old rules. Pisces makes the rules irrelevant. And once people stop believing in a system, no amount of power can keep it alive. That's not rebellion. That's gravity. And it's already happening.